What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. And today in this video, as you can see by the title and as you can see right behind me, we're going to be doing some maintenance to my 2014 Polaris Ranger 400. Let's go ahead and get into it. So as you guys can see, this is my 2014 Polaris Ranger 4x4 400 high output. And today in this video, we're going to be doing some maintenance things to it. Only 3 things. And that is all right here. We've got an oil change kit for it. We've got our grease gun for all of the fittings on the entirety of the Ranger. And we've got some gear case oil for the rear and the front gear case. So let's go ahead and jump into our first thing, which is going to be the oil change. I'm going to show you guys what you need and all the oil and the oil filters that you guys will need as well. I'll link everything that I have in this video in the description box below, and we can go ahead and get into our oil change. All right, guys, I've got everything that you need for the oil change right here laid out in front of us. You will need some sort of a drain pan. I'm using this one. It doesn't really matter which one you use. I'm using gloves. I won't be using them, but they are optional. You will need a socket wrench. I'm using a 3/8 inch. You will need a 14 millimeter socket. This is for a 3/8 inch. And the oil filter and oil I am using, there's the part number for the oil filter, 2520799. And the oil are directly from Polaris. I will link them both down in the description box below, alongside every other thing used in this video. The next step y'all can do is go ahead and remove the seat, set that out of the way, and tilt the bucket back on your Ranger and stick your drain pan up underneath. We're going to come up by the driver's side here. On the rear is your oil pan. I can get in here with the camera. This is your oil pan here. This is your drain plug right here. That's the 14 millimeter socket. Go ahead and stick your drain pan underneath there and remove that oil drain plug, and we can drain all of our oil. Sorry about that, guys. My gimbal just died, and so the camera work's going to be a little bit more shaky, but that's okay. So the next thing you want to do after your oil is drained, you want to put your drain plug back in, as you guys can see, and tighten it down hand tight. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come into the driver's side here, look directly at the motor, and right here, right down here where my finger is pointing, you can see it kind of right there, is our oil filter. We're going to go ahead and put our drain pan underneath and unscrew that and put the new one on. Next thing you want to do is grab your new filter here and just put a little bit of the fresh oil on your finger and put it around the rubber gasket here on the oil filter, and then you can go ahead and reattach it to your motor. And this just makes sure that this oil filter has a nice and good seal to the motor. And now that your oil filter is nice and snug on there, we can go ahead and come right here next to the battery to our oil fill housing here and take this cap off and go ahead and put our new fresh oil in. All right, so the next thing you want to do after you put your oil in and you got your oil cap back on, the next thing you want to do is cycle the motor. Just turn it on, turn your whole Polaris on for about 15 to 20 seconds, then cut it off and then let it sit for about 5 minutes, and then recheck your oil and add more oil if you need to. Now I will say this, whenever you do order an oil change kit, it'll only come with enough oil to put into your reservoir, not for the motor. If you plan on taking your drain plug off of the motor itself and draining the oil inside of the motor, you will have to buy extra oil. All right, guys, the next thing we're going to be servicing is our front and rear diffs, or what I call diffs. What you're going to need is a 8 millimeter, what I call an Allen head. That's for the plugs. I'm going to be using my M18 Impact, and you will also need a 13 millimeter socket alongside the demand drive fluid, or whatever kind of fluid that goes with your Ranger. Now I always use Polaris fluids. I just don't trust any other fluids for these because they were designed for this fluid. So let's go ahead and begin with the rear diff. We're gonna start back here on the rear one. Here is your filler plug here. And on the passenger side, you can see it just barely right there. That is your drain plug. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna remove the drain plug, and if you got fluid leaking out of your drain plug, you do not need to top this thing off. If you do not have any fluid leaking out of this drain plug after you take this out, you do need to remove this one here and top off your fluids. All right, so I removed my drain plug there, and as you guys can see, I did have a little bit trickling out, but I am going to go ahead and just add just a little fluid in there so it's running out a little bit faster. It was just barely trickling out when I pulled that drain plug off. So I'm just going to add just a little bit more in there, and then we're going to move on to the front. Also, one thing I just want to interject and say that whenever you tighten up your drain plugs or your fill plugs on these diffs, just make sure you tighten them hand tight and snug, just nice and snug, because you don't want to strip those threads. All right, now we are on to the front diff. First thing we need to do is remove the front bumper, and you can do that by removing these two bolts here on the driver's side, and it's the same thing on the passenger side as well, and removing the 3 bolts right here, and they're all a 13mm socket. All right, once you remove your front bumper, you can look through right here and see that drain plug here, and we're just going to be cracking this one open, and same thing as the rear, we're going to be seeing if there's any fluid leaking out. If not, just go ahead and top it off. And if there's fluid leaking out, or if you can see the fluid, should be good. And man, do I need to clean in here. There's a lot of dirt in there. So we can go ahead and do that now. All right, so once you got the front diff serviced, you can go ahead and put your bumper back up and hand tighten your screws. And once all your screws are hand tightened, we can go ahead and gun them back down. All right, guys, so after the gear case service, the next thing that you're gonna wanna do is grease all the fittings front to back, or back to front, or wherever you want to start on this Ranger, on your Ranger. Now I'm going to be showing you where all the grease fittings are on the front and then the rear. And then we're going to grease them all, and then we're going to close this video out. All right, so on the front of your Polaris Ranger, there's going to be 4 grease points, and on the rear, there's a total of 10. So starting here on the front, we've got on the A-arms, we got 1 right there and 1 right there. And it's the same thing on the passenger side here. Got 1 right there and 1 right there. And then coming to the rear, there is quite a few on the rear. So on the sway bar here, you've got 1 there. And then the same spots on the A-arms, as you guys can see right there. And on the other side there, right there. And on the underside of the A-arms right here, there are more, as you can see right there. And that's going to do it on both sides. So let's go ahead and get those greased up. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's video. If you enjoyed, or if I helped you out in any way, shape, or form, make sure to give me a like. Comment down below what Polaris or Polaris vehicles that you do own currently, or what your dream one is. And subscribe for more content like this. I will be making this a new series, working on this Polaris Ranger and possibly future ones. Stay tuned for the next video, guys.